I am back at pexels.com. I just typed in black background in the search and found another great one to use for social media. We can do it as a, gym motivation quote. So I have this black background. I'm going to go ahead and download that picture and bring it in. So I already have it in Adobe Photoshop, and we're going to isolate her. It's the first thing I like to do. So I'm just going to go ahead and double click, unlock it, and just going to do a select subject, and it does this awesome selection algorithm. And I'm going to create a new artboard. So all I'm going to do is, when I created the new document, I created an artboards. And so all I have to do is click on the top of the artboard here, and I have the artboard tool selected. And I'm going to simply just create a new artboard, and it's going to do the same 1080 by 1080. I can continue to just create as many as I want. I can even do a carousel. And what's great is if I do 10 of these, which is the max you're allowed to have on Instagram, I can go to File, Export As, and I can quickly export all 10 of my carousel posts, and you can create really great templates this way too. But that's a whole nother project for a whole nother day. So here I am on Artboard 2. I'm just going to paste what I had. I'm going to do Command V, go ahead and click on OK. So let's go ahead and try to think of a headline that we can put here, and I'll be right back. So I typed in just kind of a generic quote. There's no such thing as a wasted workout. We're going to try to integrate this typography around the woman. And so this is just Helvetica, just kind of a default regular size. And so when I make this larger, you can see how it takes up so much space. It's going to be hard to really kind of fit that and have enough space for her to show her whole body. And so that's where condensed typefaces really come in handy. So let's go back to our list. Let's go back all the way to the list I had. Let's find one that is fairly condensed, but maybe something different than Komu. Let's try and find something a little different. Let's try this one right here. Let's type in that. There it is. And let's do bold, but maybe black. Black is always the biggest size. Let's just kind of see here. I think that's going to work. That's going to have the greatest impact. There's a lot of gaps there between the leading here, so let's tighten the leading. So I'm just using my arrow keys so I can quickly tap through the leading sizes. So see how the headline ends right here, and the Helvetica was creeping into the right side of the lady. And just a side note, you can collapse and uncollapse these different artboards. So if all the layers start crossing over and you get confused, you could just collapse that first artboard over here, and you could just focus on the artboard that you're working on, which is Artboard 2. So we have her isolated already. We brought that in when we first started. So let's bring that on top of the typography. So we're just going to position it so you can still read the text. And this is where it gets a little bit tricky because you don't want to cover vital parts of the typography. So let me move this around. I can also, of course, I would probably go back and clean up that selection a little bit, but let's go ahead and select her. I'm just going to double click and pull up the layer styles. Let's see if we can't just do a quick drop shadow. Let's change the angle so it's casted downward. And I think that's pretty good with distance. It saved it from the last time I did it over on the Artboard 1. And let's tighten up the size so it's a little bit more distinct. And let's just make sure we have equal margin kind of around the edges, just to make sure that we're not too close this way and it looks unbalanced. We don't want to have anything look unbalanced. So just trying to find nice equal spacing. So let's bring into texture. This is something that's really screaming for some kind of texture on that stark black background. So I'm going to go in Pexels and download the first texture I see that I think is gritty enough for kind of this inspirational gym quote. I actually ended up going with something abstract. So I just typed in abstract in Pexels and I was able to get something like this. What I liked about it is it had that gritty texture, but it also had different pockets of color. So it wasn't just a solid repeat kind of texture. It kind of had something different about it. So I'm going to go ahead and download this and bring it in. I'm just dragging this right into the Artboard 2. Just going to expand it, and we're just going to do a blending mode to quickly apply the texture on top of the typography. But I don't think I want to cover the woman. So I'm just going to use a blending mode to quickly cover everything up, including the typography. I want to give the type a little bit of grittiness too. So I'm just in my layers panel. It's going to do a blending mode. Let's see what kind of gives it the gritty look without overdoing it. Like that's kind of overdone. So I'm already thinking luminosity. And that's going to kind of keep it more of a gray. It's going to kind of get rid of that color that was already there. It's going to kind of desaturate it in a way. And I'm going to bring the opacity way, way down. I just want this to be a subtle texture, just like that. So I used luminosity, 17% with that photo. Of course, I can drag that around to see kind of what I like about it. It's got kind of a lot going on here, and it's a little stark over here. So I kind of like that different contrast in the background. So one thing I'm going to do is some of the texture, it looks a little distracting on the woman. So I'm just going to bring the woman above the texture. So she looks a little bit more clean and the background looks a little bit more gritty. I think I like that sense of contrast. So what I want to do, and I do this a lot in other projects I do this in a YouTube thumbnail project, but I like to take people, especially when you have kind of a high color contrast headline, and make them black and white so the headline color really, really, really pops out. So I see that I don't have this as a smart object. Somehow maybe when I isolated the woman, it got rid of the smart object. That's no big deal. I can just right click my layer. I'm going to convert this to smart object, so if I do any kind of adjustments, it won't permanently adjust it. It'll still save the original file. That's why we do smart objects. So now that we've right clicked and made that a smart object, let's go up to our adjustments and let's just do a simple black and white. And we're just going to go with the default. Of course, we can always sit here and adjust certain colors and shadows, and we'll do that another time. So now that I did a smart object, now it has a smart filter, and I can easily take this on and off, and it's very easy to go back to what we had. So I already did this ahead of time. I went ahead and changed this to yellow. I thought yellow and black really helped make it pop, and I wanted to break up the headline. I like breaking up headlines because if this was all white, it would look very washed out. If it was all yellow, it would just be too much. So I think this kind of two-tone look is a nice balance. And I think it's missing something, so I would love to add just a little pop of color. And when I think of yellow, a complement color on the color wheel is blue. What if we add just a little hint of blue over here in this kind of blank area, blank space? So what I'm going to do, I'm in Artboard 2, I'm going to create a layer on the very, very, very top, and I'm going to get a soft round brush. So I'm going to get my brush tool, I'm going to make it pretty big, maybe even bigger than that, maybe even 1500 pixels big, and I'm going to get a blue color, and I can even borrow this blue color, maybe one of this blue color right here. I kind of like how that looks. And I'm just going to get my paintbrush tool again. I'm just going to click once, paint over, and I'm going to use, and I might even do a little bit of a darker, deeper blue actually. So I'm just kind of making some adjustments, clicking once, and I'm going to use a blending mode to be able to blend this in nicely. So let me go ahead and use screen. Screen is going to be bright. It's going to kind of leave it bright, and we're going to tone it down. So we're going to cut it in half, the opacity. I'm going to cut it in half to 50% so it's just not so overwhelming because my eye goes directly to the blue background. Well, we don't want that. We want the eye to stay here in the headline. So let's just make it an accent and leave it right there. We can sharpen that, just doing some last minute adjustments. We can sharpen this texture. I love to sharpen textures to just give it that really high resolution look. So I have this, and I'm just going to go to filter, and I already have it saved, sharpen. And I also like to sharpen my photos too, just once, just a quick sharpen, kind of just makes it really, so you can kind of see a little bit more of the details when you sharpen something. So that's a quick one using condensed typography. If you did not use condensed for that, that headline would look crazy. I'm sure there's some pretty cool opportunities to work the headline, but we're going to move on to one more little project. We're going to practice doing outline typography, and it's really, really easy in Adobe Illustrator. So I'm going to pop into Adobe Illustrator. So let's say, let's go ahead and create a new document really quickly. I'm going to show you how easy it is in Adobe Illustrator and how in Photoshop it's not exactly intuitive. So here in Illustrator, we just type in outlined type. I'm just doing Helvetica bold. So if I wanted to make this outlined, let's make it a little bit bigger. I just go down here, make a stroke. I mean, that's really easy. And I have my stroke panel, and I can add rounded edges, and I can make it thicker. Like, that is so easy to do in Illustrator. But in Photoshop, you don't really have this stroke option on typography, if you've ever noticed. So we're going to talk about that next.